Spring Framework. And before moving further with our Spring Boot and Spring Framework and how the different things work, I think it's very important to set up our local environment on which we are going to code. And for that environment, we are going to use IntelliJ IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment and provides a lot of functionalities using which we can develop our projects. And for that, we are going to use IntelliJ IDE, but you can use Eclipse. If your company is using Eclipse, then you can go ahead with Eclipse also. But I believe that IntelliJ IDE provides a lot more functionalities and it is much more optimized than Eclipse in many scenarios. So we are going to use IntelliJ IDE for that. And for this project, we are going to go ahead with the community edition. But if you have the ultimate version key, if you got it from your employer or from your friend or somewhere, you can download this as well. But I think for most of the use case in this course, this will suffice. So just download it according to your own operating system, and the installation process is also fairly easy. I believe even a 6th grade student can download and install software these days. So it's not going to be that difficult for you. So just go ahead and download and install. The installation process requires just clicking next button, and you can leave everything at default and it will download fairly good IntelliJ IDE setup for you. All right. And even if you are facing some difficulties, if you are facing some errors, there are lots of resources on YouTube. You can just take help of those and then set up your complete installation of IntelliJ IDE inside your laptop. And after that, we're going to go to this website, which is called Spring Initializer. This is a utility or website, you can say, from where we can download our starter project, so that we don't have to write each and every line when we are configuring our first microservice or first Spring Boot project. All right. So from here, we can choose which kind of build tool do we want. So we can have Gradle or Maven, but we are going to go ahead with the Maven only because Maven has been used by a lot of companies these days, right? So it is in the industry for a long time and it is being used by many of the companies. So we are going to go ahead with the Maven only. And for the language, you have these 3 language support, but we are going to go with the Java programming language only. And then for the Spring Boot version, you can choose any of the stable version. The snapshot versions are not stable right now, so we can go ahead with this one, 3.3.0. And then we have to configure some project metadata here. So here we have to define the group name. So this has to be a unique identifier according to you and your project. So here you can define your company name. So I can write Coding Shuttle and then myself, my username. And then here you can define your project. So separated by a dot, I can define week 1 introduction. All right. And this is the artifact name. Artifact is something that gets outputted from your code. So you write something and then your code should output something that you can then deploy on several machines, or you can share with your friends and they can run it. So this is the name of the output file and you can write anything. I'm going to go ahead with the introduction to Spring Boot like so. And the name of your application, you can leave it at that only, introduction to Spring Boot. And then description for this project. So the description of this project can be for week 1 introduction. And then this is the package name. They have already configured the package name and it is a combination of these 2 things. First one is group. So this part is the group name and the second part is the artifact name. So we can leave it at that only. And then we can define the packaging. Like in which version do you want to define your artifact? So your output file can be of 2 types. It could be jar file or war file. Depending on the configuration, you can change your output file from one extension to another extension. For now, let's just go ahead with jar and I'll show you what var means in later part of this course. But for now, just go ahead with jar. And then for the Java version, you can choose 21, which is the LTS version, or you can go ahead with the most latest version of Java, which is 22. So let's just keep it at 22 only for now. And then from here, we can define some dependencies. Now, these dependencies will provide extra functionality to your code. And you don't have to set up all these functionalities by yourself because these provide some starter code that can be built right inside your code. And you don't have to write even a single piece of code or don't have to configure anything. And that is the power of Spring Boot that we talked about in the previous lecture as well. For example, if you want to set up your web, that means you want to set up your server and then MVC and a lot more other stuff, you can just use this. Just click on Spring Web and then it will add this particular Spring Web dependency inside your code so that you don't have to configure everything from very scratch. And then you can have REST repositories or lots of other stuff as well. For example, Timeleaf, when you want to define your HTML pages inside your Java code, you can do that. If you want to add authentication support, you want to add Spring Security there. Or if you want to add some database support, you want to add the Spring Data JPA in there. And there are lots of other cool mini frameworks, or you can say libraries, that you can directly add inside your code, and then you don't have to configure them manually. Alright, So right after that, you can just click on this generate button and it will generate a zip file for you. As you can see, this is the zip file, introduction to springboot.zip. Now go ahead and uncompress this file, and then after uncompressing it, open it inside your IntelliJ IDE that you just downloaded and installed. So I'm going to do just that now. So if you open up your IntelliJ IDE, it will look something like this. For now, if you have not created any projects, then this part would be empty because you don't have any projects, because you just freshly installed your IntelliJ IDE. But I have a lot of projects set up right here. And from here, you can just go ahead and click on this open button and open the zip file that you just downloaded. So I'm just going to do that. Just click on this open button, and from here, go to the downloads. From downloads, just go to this file here, and then from here, just open this. Click on the trust project button here and then open it. And this will start downloading all the dependencies that you have configured already. For example, so this is the project structure that you will see for the first time. And here you can write your code. For example, this is the source folder, or you can say source package. And in here, inside the main, we're going to write our Java code, and they have already configured a little bit of Java code for us. So this is the main file. This is the main entry point of your Spring Boot application. As you can see, as this class contains the main function right here. And you can directly run this, right? Just click on this run button and it will start the Spring Boot project for you that you just created. So even if we have not written even a single line of code, even a single letter of code, they have configured a good enough Spring Boot project for us. And it has a Apache Tomcat server, as you can see. So this is a Tomcat server that has been initialized for us on the port 8080. We didn't define this port 8080, but because this Spring Boot has auto configuration built in, so it has configured the servlet and the Tomcat server with this port 8080 for us. As you can see, there are a lot of other things that are going on here. We are not going to go into too much detail like what all is happening here. But for now, you can understand that, okay, this is the basic starter project that has been initialized for us. And now from here, we can start writing our code. So I'll just go through the project structure in this module, in this class, and then later on we'll code in much more detail. So for example, you can just see that this is the Java package, and then in here, this is the package that you defined in the starter utility, right? So this was what you defined in the Spring Starter website. And here you can add some resources. For example, if you want to have some static HTML files, you can add them there. Or if you have some templates, you can add them here. Or if you have some if you want to define some more configuration, you can add those here. For example, I want to set that, hey, the port of my server cannot be 8080, so I want to change that. So you can just do that. You can define your server.port, and you can say that it should be 9000 from now on. And if you run it from here like this, so what this will do is it will modify the default behavior of the Apache Tomcat server, at least for the server port part. And now you'll see the port on which it is initialized is 9000, and you can configure a lot more other stuff as well. And if you want to see like which all configurations can I change, which all configuration I can tweak, just go to the website of Spring Boot documentation, and there you will find a lot of things which you can configure. Let me just go to that website and I'll show you. So just search for Spring properties, and there you'll find this link right here, common application properties. And from here, you can see a lot of things. For example, you can set debug to true. If you set debug to true, then you will find a lot more logs inside your Spring Boot application. And you can configure a lot more other stuff as well. And if you just look for port, let's see, server.port. So you'll see this is the server.port, and these all are the server related configurations that you can set if you want, right? These are all the configurations. We are not going to go in too much detail of these things. So we'll use them as we prefer. And many of the companies use a lot more configurations from here, but you don't have to learn and remember all of these. If your use case arrives, you can just go ahead and search for that configuration and you will find that here, right? For example, we saw the debug one, right? So you can set debug equals to true, like so. And if you run it now, you'll find a lot of logs that are printed with your Spring application. For example, you can see all these logs that are being printed here, right? These are the unconditional classes. These are the exclusions. These are the not matched configurations and some of the matched configurations, right? So we are finding a lot more logs now because we have set the debug to true. Or you can just remove these and you can just run your application again. So the configurations will now be set to default only. And this one is the Spring application name that we set in the Spring Starter utility website, right? So next up, we have this test folder or test package, and in here we should define our test cases. And a good practice is that you should define your classes of the test files same as these files here. For example, as you can see, this is the same project structure that we are following here. So this one is the same package, and this is the same package, and then this is the same file name, and at the end of this file you can say this is the test string that is appended. So that means that this particular file corresponds to the test file of this particular Java file, right? So now from here you can add your test cases if you want to add some test some of the functionalities, and if you want to test all those functionalities every time you want to run this code, you can do that with the help of writing these tests. And tests are very important. In the major companies, you will see in the big tech companies that they write test cases for each and everything. If they add a single piece of code, they'll write a test for that. Even if they are trying to modify the previous functionalities, they will add a new test case that will adhere to the new functionality that they have added. So test cases are very important when we talk about development in big tech companies. They tend to prefer a process called test-driven development. So you can do test-driven development as well, in which you will develop everything and you will write test cases for each and everything that you are developing, right? So that everything is working just fine, nothing is breaking. And next up, we have this target folder in which all of the jar file or everything that you create should go. So you don't have to write anything here. This gets auto-generated by the Spring Boot framework, and it actually builds the output file, and all the output files go inside the target. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. After that, we have this git ignore file related to the git. We have this help.md file, which is your readme.md markdown file. And then you have this maven w, which is the terminal shell utility, so that you don't have to install maven inside your laptop if you want to run maven commands. I'll show you all these in great detail when we move ahead with this course. But for now, I'm just showing you like which files do which stuff. And then we have this pom.xml. Pom stands for project object model file. And if you're coming from a MERN stack background, if you're coming from a Node.js background, then you must be familiar with the package.json file. You can think of this file as the same as package.json file, because you can define your parent configuration, like what is your parent configuration, what is the model of the parent, and what is the group ID of this project, and what is the version of this project, name of this project, description, and the properties file can contain different types of versions, like this contains Java version here. And then you can define all the dependencies on which this project is dependent, so that this pom.xml will then go ahead and download all the things from the Maven central repository. For example, this Spring Boot starter web dependency is hosted on a remote repository in Maven central. So it is the duty of pom.xml. So it's the duty of Maven basically. Maven goes through the pom.xml and it will download each and every dependency that is required by a project, and it will download all that code for you. Now, where does that code go? Well, this goes inside your external libraries. Just open this and you don't have to write anything here, but all that code has been downloaded for you. For example, you will see that we have Spring Web dependency here, right? Spring Framework.Spring Web dependency that we didn't add, but since we have added this dependency. And how did we add this dependency? Well, we added this inside our Spring initializer, right? This is the dependency Spring Web that we downloaded. So it got configured inside our pom.xml. And from here, they downloaded a lot of things as well. For example, they have downloaded MVC as well and Jackson as well. So all these things have been downloaded and they are ready to use inside our project. So now we can use all these things, right? So now we have an idea of like how our project structure looks like. We're going to code a lot of stuff inside our package right here, which is this one. And we will configure our properties using the application.properties file. But that all will come in the next part of this course. So this is it for today's class, where we set up our environment and we can start writing our code in this package only. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.